Britain is broken. And it's painful to say this, that the country that one loves, admires, thinks of as being great, not just in this age, but throughout the ages. It's the pain that was felt by John of Gaunt in that famous speech of his in Richard II, when he says, "This land of such dear souls, this dear, dear land, dear for her reputation through the world, is now leased out. I die pronouncing it, like to a tenement or pelting farm." But that's the situation that we are in, like to a tenement or a pelting farm. And a pelting farm was a small farm, a poultry farm, a farm of no significance, rather than a great landed estate that this nation should be. And where is it that we're broken? Well, look around. What are the problems? The problems besiege us from every side, and they're encapsulated in so many ways. The latest story about prisoners being released early. Well, okay, that may happen. It may happen occasionally, but currently it's happening on every day of the working week, and the number's gone up significantly since Labour got into government. It's just routine incompetence. And it gets worse, because for the best part of a week, Wandsworth Prison did not even know that a prisoner had left, that he wasn't there. What sort of inspections did they do? And this is like one of those carry-on films where the rolled up pillow and the blankets make it look as if someone's there, but actually he's escaped. It is just so shameful and so incompetent, and is symptomatic of systems that do not work. And where else does this apply in the British system? Well, it's been with policing, hasn't it, where the police have been arresting people for tweets, which they now say they won't do anymore, but they don't arrest people for shoplifting. So shoplifting's fine, but tweeting isn't. It happens with driving tests, where there's such a large backlog that fraud has increased in driving tests. It's happening in the National Health Service, where productivity has declined so much that, depending on which figures you believe, it's costing us 20 to 35 billion pounds a year extra simply to provide the same level of service that was provided in 2019, because productivity has declined. Now, you would naturally expect in an advanced economy for productivity to increase every year. Why? Because more mechanization takes place, more technology is used. In the health service, more AI is used, and this has been happening. I actually visited a company that helps with AI in hospitals, and they're reporting enormous successes. But in the NHS as a whole, productivity is down, and the junior doctors are talking about going on strike again next week. There is no grip, no guidance, no spirit from the government that is making things improve and get better. And it's across the board, and it is to some extent the consequence of long-standing problems. We've got some tanks that have just gone into service 8 years late. And it may be that tanks aren't the best technology anymore anyway, after all that has happened with drones in Ukraine. We just don't seem to be on top of things. Whereas if you look at the United States, if you look at America, America is still leading the world. It's leading the world in technology, in artificial intelligence, in pharmaceuticals, in the development of medical practices. It is not that the Western world is corrupt and failed and hopeless, and that there's a new age that is going to be China and India. It is a British problem, a problem that we seem to be wallowing in defeatism and failure. And this just isn't good enough, because we want a country that is prosperous and gets richer, and where people's standard of living get better. But I think to some extent we have enjoyed the luxuries of wealth and of comfort, and therefore have shied away from making difficult decisions. Those difficult decisions that will help the economy to grow, will get people back into work, and will lead to the next generation having a higher standard of living than this generation. But the problems are great. Did you know, for example, that we spend 7% of GDP more than we ever take in taxes? We almost never get above 38% of GDP as tax revenue, and when we do, we fall back again afterwards. but our expenditure is around 45% of GDP. This is really very important because it means that there is 7% that has to be funded every year by borrowing or by asset sales. But with asset sales, you run out eventually. This isn't the 1980s where we've got a whole string of privatizations that we can have. So you've got to borrow the money. But unless your economy is growing in real terms by enough to cover the increase in the deficit, you get into a doom loop where debt gets higher and higher, interest payments get higher and higher, and your debt goes up just to pay the interest that you have accrued on your debt. And our economy isn't growing enough to sustain a 7% budget deficit. And when you put this into cash terms, this is the best part of £200 billion a year. 190 billion is the current figure, but that's not far off 200 billion. And to get that, you don't need just little tweaks. Cutting a few civil servants won't cut the mustard. You need fundamental reform, and you need reform in the way services are delivered, the way government acts. You need a change in the whole governmental approach to get more productivity, but you've got to get the routine things done well. That is going to be the test. The test is how you can be competent with less money. And we should learn from the incompetence, from the fact that Britain is broken, that spending money is not the answer. For decades, politicians have said we've spent more money on this, we've spent billions more on the health service, we've taken on more police. This isn't the point. It's not about expenditure, it's not about numbers, it's about how you use those numbers. Let me get back to the point on shoplifting. Decisions made by chief constables mean that shoplifters aren't apprehended. If chief constables made different decisions, then those shoplifters would be apprehended. If they stopped looking at internet postings and concentrated on this type of really antisocial crime that costs us all money. I discovered recently that the cost to Tesco of shoplifting is more than its profit, which is an extraordinary position to be in. That costs you money when you buy your groceries. It is a cost to you because of shoplifting. If the police concentrate on that, they don't need more numbers. They just need to use their current numbers differently. The same applies to the NHS. It mustn't get more money until it is reformed. Previously, everyone has said, well, we will reform it with more money. Disappointingly, Wes Streeting, in whom I had quite high hopes, has gone down that same route. Money first, productivity second. This never works. They take the money and come back for more. It's like the Dane Geld. When you pay the Dane Geld, they want more Geld for the Dane. And that's what's been happening with the NHS. You need to change structures so that it works for the patient rather than being a producer-led system. You've also got to get the right incentives for work. This isn't about being mean to people, because actually not working is dispiriting for those who are out of work. It's dispiriting for people to be on incapacity benefits year in, year out. It's not just Britain that's broken, it's people's lives that get broken by this. And so you want to make the incentives work. And yes, there has to be a bit of stick as well as the carrot. And the stick is proper checks, proper interviews, ensuring that people genuinely are unfit for work before the money is handed out. Freezing benefits seems to me monstrously unfair that taxpayers are having their thresholds frozen. So every year, a taxpayer is worse off in real terms, in inflation-adjusted terms, because of this freeze in thresholds. And every year, whilst that's been going on, welfare recipients, paid for by the same taxpayers, are getting slightly better off or remaining the same. This is just extremely unfair on the tax-paying, hard-working base. This isn't saying you shouldn't look after people who couldn't work or look after people who are incapacitated, but they should not be doing better than the people who are paying for them. So there's a huge job of work to be done to restore the nation, to get back to being a great and strong nation that we once were. But bear in mind, let's go back to John of Gaunt. John of Gaunt was the uncle to Richard II. Richard II was usurped by Henry IV. And within 16 years of his usurpation, we won the Battle of Agincourt. So it is possible to rise again from periods of difficulty. It is possible to rise again from the depths of despair, the slough of despond, to be great, to be forceful, to play a role on the world stage, to become more prosperous. That is what we need to do. That's what our ambition must be. But we need to recognize how bad it is at the moment, and we need to get the basic structures right. We need to reduce the size of the state, but the state that exists needs to do its job properly, which recently it's been failing to do. As always, thank you very much for watching.